Why don't I put up a fence if I don't want your kid climbing in my trees? Done. Not myself, but my aunt has some new neighbors renting the house next to her owned property. These guys have a toddler and a slightly older child and dog that they love to leave outside unattended. Absolutely priceless when child services showed up and the 2-year-old was alone in the front yard. The bigger kid had started coming into her yard and climbing one of her trees. And she asked them to keep their kid out of her yard and trees kindly, as she doesn't want a lawsuit if the kid falls and breaks a leg on her property. Guy says, if it's such a big deal, why don't you just put up a fence? She cut down the tree the kid was climbing and a few others and stacked all the limbs into a 6-foot wall of natural fence. Guy was pissed. Asked her why she had to be such a BTCH about it. Sorry. Thought we were taking your advice, LMAO. Edit. To everyone really concerned about the trees. She was already planning to get rid of them due to rot and proximity to the house. The fence idea just came up after this guy decided to be a jerk about keeping his kid out of her yard. She was just going to have the wood hauled off until that conversation struck the fence idea. Ah, that sucks about the rot. My grandpa ended up taking down a tree cause of that. Then he discovered he made a bunch of chipmunks homeless and felt so terrible he freaking built them a tiny house on the stump. They still live there. It's pretty cute. Reminds me of a story from my hometown. There was a guy who wanted to put a fence around his property. His neighbors didn't want him to for some reason. I guess somehow they managed to get the city to prevent him from putting up his fence. His response was to do some landscaping, and he put boulders around the edge of his property. Not a fence. So he couldn't be fined. And it pissed his neighbors off even more. She cut down the tree while the kid was climbing it, right? I bet she would do it again. Your aunt is a evil genius. Neighbor may pine for the wood old days. He may birch about it to his family. He may even balsam, but between you and me, he's just not gonna be very popular. Now they climb the fence. I don't know if it's this way in your area or country, but a citation for trespassing bypasses any lawsuit here. They get hurt, and they can't sue. They shouldn't be there in first place, and any injury is then declared their fault by default. This aunt is brilliant. Love it. Awesome. Also, my tired mind had to process what you wrote. It's very correct. But for a few seconds I imagined your aunt cutting down a tree whilst that hellspawn was actually busy climbing it. Tears of joy. I would have covered said tree in poison ivy or other itchy plant. Making sure to be careful. If you are sensitive, covering in graphite would also work, but better for metal poles or handles. Sounds exactly like my boyfriend's neighbors. Toss the kids outside so that they don't have to deal with them. But you and the other neighbors do. Turns out the bark was worse than the neighbor's bite. I was hoping it would end with her getting an electric fence installed. I was hoping this would be a situation where the neighbor's yard was actually much smaller than they realized, and your aunt basically penned them into their actual legal boundaries by making a fence, leaving them with only like a 20 feet by 20 feet yard, when they thought they had a 40 feet by 80 feet or something. Ha. I want to marry your aunt. Pot calling the kettle black. Neighbor was the first. Your aunt simply responded in kind. Your aunt is an internet hero. How do you make an entire fence out of a few trees? You would need hundreds of trees. Not gonna get to the root of the problem now. Whatever. Sounds like the neighbor is all bark and no fence.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Ericast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.